I don't know how to start this video. Guys, I just went and watched Five Nights at Freddy's last night. It was pretty solid. 8.5 years in the making, and the movie finally came out. Oh my god, thank you, Jesus! Just thought I'd post this review and also use this opportunity to test out this new microphone I got, so hopefully it sounds good. Jump scare. Sorry. As far as jump scares goes, Five Nights at Freddy's movie, not the games, the movie, god, that feels weird to say that this actually happened, like, that I actually sat down in the theater and watched this. Actually doesn't have too many jump scares, but hey, whatever. So just to put it into perspective of how I went into this movie, what kind of mindset did I have? Because I think it does influence how I felt about the film afterwards and how I feel about it. Now, I have been a Five Nights at Freddy's fan since the beginning. I've played all the games. I've been there since its inception in 2014. This movie was announced in 2015. I think I was like in the 5th grade. I can distinctly remember sitting on the school bleachers and seeing that image on other people's phones, because I didn't have my own iPhone or Samsung or whatever. There's a fly flying around here. I didn't have my own phone at the time, so I was looking over other people's shoulders. And I remember seeing the Warner Bros. Image where like Freddy was like holding the logo for Warner Bros. Because they had just gotten the rights. And that was like when the second game, or even like the third game, I think, was coming out. So a long time ago, 8.5 years, the Five Nights at Freddy's movie was finally coming. It was October. It was a full moon night. I dressed up in my purple man looking suit, and I was ready to spend 5 nights at Freddy's. I got to the theater with some homies. I got some candy. I got me a Pepsi, and then we all went into the theater. I sat my purple shirt wearing ass down in that seat, and I was so ready for this experience. I didn't care about what critics were saying. I didn't care about what, anyone else was saying. At the end of the day, I just wanted to have fun watching this movie. After 8 years, I thought that they could at least give me that. Even if it wasn't a masterpiece of a film, I just wanted to have fun. And I'm happy to say that I got exactly what I wanted with this film. If you are a fan of Five Nights at Freddy's, you need to go watch this film in the theater. It is quite the experience, I have to say. I was in a pretty packed theater with some friends. There were people dressing up as their favorite characters and coming in. There were some people dressed up as the marionettes. There were some people in Five Nights at Freddy's hoodies. It was just good vibes all around. One of the stinkiest theaters I've been in. Oh yeah, and the structure of this video is kind of gonna be a little bit interesting. I guess it's nothing spectacular, but I just thought that I'd let you know going forward that there will be spoilers in this video, but this segment right here that I'm doing right now is not going to be spoiler heavy. That's going to come a little bit later in the video. I'm gonna try and make this video too long. I just want to give you my general thoughts straight up front right here, and then get into some spoiler territory a little bit later. Don't worry, I'm going to warn you when those spoilers come up, so that if you haven't seen this movie, you don't get spoiled, but make sure you stay off the internet. There's a lot of stuff flying around right now. Some big scenes are being posted out there. But yeah, so non-spoiler review. What did I think of the movie? Well, I have to say this was one of the most emotionally satisfying experiences I've ever had in a theater before. As soon as we opened up on the first scene with this kind of cold open, and it opens up inside the pizzeria. It's not really a spoiler. I think we could all see this coming, but it was genuinely super emotional. Like, I was getting a little bit teary-eyed because I couldn't believe that it was finally happening after all this time, and it looked so good. The pizzeria in this film, I mean, all the set design and all of the production in general is really stellar quality. And I mean, us Five Nights at Freddy's fans, we've seen these animatronics, these amazing works created by the Jim Henson's Creature Shop. They did a phenomenal job with this movie. The highlight of the movie for me is definitely those animatronics, because you see them a decent amount in this movie, and I'm so glad that they did them practical. It just would not have been the same if they had used CGI. Now, that's not to say that there is no CGI in the movie. There definitely is, but even that part of the film is still also very well done. The visual effects look very good. And honestly, I think that's a testament to just how good of a director Ematami, I don't know how to pronounce her last name. I'm going to call her just Emma. To how good a director Emma really is. This film is beautiful to look at. The shot composition, the cinematography, the sound design. The sound design is really good in this movie, and the editing too. It's all really just well made from a technical standpoint that I couldn't help but be impressed by, especially, like I said, when it comes to the animatronics, because they are practical, they are in camera, they are moving around. I mean, you just don't see that happen a whole lot anymore. And the sound design really helps with those guys too, because when they're walking around, you can really feel the weight of their footsteps. I mean, they feel like machines. I mean, they even kind of sound like cyborgs, which is a little bit silly to say, but that's just what it reminded me of. Let's talk about characters. Obviously, we have Mike Schmidt and his little sister Abby. That was also a highlight of the film for me. I think the relationship between these two actors really sells the relationship between these two characters. Their chemistry in the film is really, really strong, and I found that to be one of the more enjoyable parts of the film. Matthew Lillard is really good. He's just one of those super expressive actors who can really do crazy people just like super well. Only thing I can complain about when it comes to him is that I think he's super underutilized in this movie. He is not in it a whole lot. There's only a handful of scenes that he's in there, and when he's on screen, he absolutely kills, especially in a scene towards the end, which I'm going to talk about in spoilers, but I just wish we had gotten to see more of him. And then Vanessa, who was played by, let me find her name, played by Elizabeth Lale. I think that's how you pronounce her last name. This is a character that I don't think is going to work for a whole lot of people. I thought that she was fine. I do think that her part is written a little bit janky, and honestly, that's kind of the worst part of this movie for me, is the writing. It feels a little bit off at certain points, and I feel like they try to mesh a little bit, like a little too much together. Like at one point I felt like they had a good vibe going, and then they do a different scene that kind of switches up that vibe into something else, and then they try to go back, and it just doesn't really work for me. It didn't really flow very well, and even though I like those scenes that I'm going to talk about later, I wish it could have just had stuck with one thing it's trying to convey. It felt like it was trying to tailor to a little bit like the two different sides of the fandom. It felt like it was trying to tailor to like the older fans who want something a little bit creepy, but then also to the younger audience, mainly to the younger audience as well. Because I'm gonna be straight up with you guys, this film is not really scary in the slightest. It's suspenseful, and I think once again, going back to the editing and the shot composition, I mean, with it being a PG-13 movie, it's not very violent, and many of the deaths are like the PG-13, like, oh, let's show something and then cut away, because you know, we can't show that on screen in a PG-13 movie. But some of the sequences are intense, but they're not really scary, I would say. They're just kind of fun to watch, I guess. Going back to the PG-13 rating, though, I actually think they did a good job pushing the boundaries with what they could do in that rating. There's some scenes in this movie that are kind of brutal, and I did like that. It's not like Saw level type gore. It's not like they're really going for it, but there are some close-up shots of like some dead bodies that are not in too good shape, where I was like, oh, okay, it's a little bit bloody, and there's like a couple deaths in there that are like, oh, okay, you know, they're going for it here. And one in particular that really threw me for a loop. There's an insane death in this movie that was just mind-blowing to me. But yeah, so from a technical standpoint, I really like the film. I think the worst thing about it is the script and the writing, but all the acting in the movie is really good, incredibly solid. Josh Hutcherson is phenomenal in this movie. He's really good as Mike, and I really found it easy to care for him in his relationship with his sister Abby. And Piper Rubio is also very good in the movie as just this young actress who plays this little girl. They were all great. They're all really good. But now I think I'm going to move on into some more spoiler territory, so you have been warned. If you have not seen the film and you don't want to be spoiled, go ahead and leave, because this is where I'm going to talk about a few things. So the film opens with a cold open kill of a previous security guard. We get the suit stuffing scene that we've always wanted to see. I was a little disappointed because it's PG-13, so we didn't get to see it in all of its graphic glory, but it is that saw trap mechanism. He gets got by that, and while it is very intense, I wish we could have gotten a little bit more from it. And then we go to Mike, who is actually having a really interesting arc that continues throughout the movie. Sadly, due to the writing, again, the writing is the biggest issue with this movie. It doesn't really feels like it leads anywhere. So Michael is kind of this broken man in this movie. He's having a custody battle with his aunt for custody over his sister. Oh, and by the way, screw the aunt. She's terrible in this movie. She's just made to be the most like evil human being in the movie, like more so than like William Afton, who we're gonna get to. But anyways, he has this whole arc where he starts falling asleep, and he'll look at this poster. It says Nebraska and it has the forest, and he gets taken back to a time period where his younger brother Garrett was taken by an unknown man who was never caught. And he has a theory, a dream theory, that if he can keep going back to that dream, he can slowly put the puzzles together and find the man responsible for kidnapping and presumably murdering his younger brother Garrett. And I thought that was a very interesting idea for Mike's character, as just something for him to do when, animatronics aren't chasing him down constantly. But like I said, it doesn't really lead anywhere. And this is where I think most of the people who go and see this movie are going to be a little bit divided. Like I said in the beginning, if you're a Five Nights at Freddy's fan, you're probably going to know who already took his brother. It's obviously William Afton, the killer of the games. If you don't know who William Afton is, you're going to be left a little bit confused, though. And that's why I feel most critics are rating it very poorly. It's because the critics probably haven't played any of the games. They don't know any of the lore. They don't know what's going on here. And that's okay. If you have no idea about what's going on with Five Nights at Freddy's, you go see this movie, I think that you can still have a good time, but you don't have to like it, as much as I do, and that's okay. But again, going back to the pizzeria, Mike gets with Steve Ragland, aka William Afton, to set up his job at the pizzeria because he needs a job to keep custody of his sister Abby. So he gets the job at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. He's visited by Vanessa. He's introduced to the animatronics. It's just, everything that you thought could happen is going to happen. They do it a lot. And this leads to us finding out that Mike actually has a babysitter for Abby, who is Max. And she is played by Kat Corner Sterling in this movie. But one thing we find out about Max is that she's not just babysitting for Mike, she's actually working with Mike's aunt to help her get custody over Abby. And this leads to one of the best cameo scenes I think I've seen in any movie. You know him, you love him, Matt Pat. He's in this movie. He shows up at this diner that's called Sparky's, and if you all remember Sparky the dog, that old Five Nights at Freddy's hoax way back in the day, I think that was the first hoax, from Five Nights at Freddy's, the first real, deep fake that was out there was Sparky the dog, and it was just that image of the, the backroom cam or something. And they named a diner after Sparky, so I caught that. I don't think most people did, but it was pretty cool. But yeah, Matt Pat shows up. He's taking their orders, and I don't know what it leads to, but he says, "Oh, it could just be a theory." I don't know. I don't remember exactly what led them up to. It was something about breakfast being the healthiest meal of the day, and he was like, "Oh, people say that, but it's just a theory." So Matt Pat's in this movie. He gets his one line, and the theater, when that happened, just erupted. It just erupted in applause and cheers, because MatPat deserves that more than anyone, in my opinion. He deserved to be in that movie, and I'm so glad that they got him. But getting back to the story, we find out that Max is working with Mike's aunt, and she and her brother cook up this idea to go to the pizzeria during the day while Mike isn't working there and trash it up to make Mike look bad. But obviously, as we know from the trailers, this group of people don't make it out alive, and this leads to probably the best death of the movie so far. It's not like it has a high body count, but this is the best death of the movie. So all the other guys are picked off, and then Max goes in, and we saw this scene in the trailer where she's lured away by this kid into the parts and service room, and she sees Freddy there, and she decides to go up and look in the mouth, and then the hand comes up and grabs her. But that's not all that happens in that scene. She gets grabbed, pulled into the mouth, and the mouth shuts and then cuts her body in half, and her lower half falls limp onto the floor. And when that happened, the theater lost its shit, and I did too. I about shit my pants when I saw that. That was the coolest scene. It was such a big highlight of the movie for me, and that was one of the moments where I was like, holy crap, they're pushing the PG-13 rating here, because we just saw someone get chomped in half, and it was all done in shadow, but it was so effective. It was such a great kill, and once again, I gotta hand it to the directing by Emma. She just did such a fantastic job compositing these shots together and editing this film. But this leads Mike to figure out that he doesn't have a babysitter anymore, so he has to end up taking Abby to the pizzeria on his shift. And while doing all this, he's still going to sleep and trying to find out more about this man who took his younger brother. But while he's asleep and he's in a dream, Abby goes away. She wakes up and she goes and finds the animatronics, and they come to life, and turns out they're actually not evil. And this is one of the biggest twists of the movie for me, is that the animatronics are actually very cuddly in the second act of this movie. The second act is definitely the weakest portion of the movie for me, but one scene that I have seen people just getting needlessly upset about is the fort building scene. And this is the scene where, Mike and Abby and Vanessa, they come in and the animatronics are alive, and they decide to build this fort out of the tables and chairs of the pizzeria. I thought that scene was pretty cute. I'm gonna be real. I mean, it was just fun. It was just good fun. It put a smile on my face. I enjoyed seeing the animatronics act pretty nice. But through a series of events, if I remember correctly, Abby is playing with the animatronics, and she goes up and she strums Bonnie's guitar, and she gets shocked. She gets blown back. And then Vanessa, a switch turns in her head, and she's like, if you ever bring Abby back, she says this to Mike in the parking lot, if you ever bring Abby back to this place, I'm going to shoot you. And it was just kind of like, okay, she knows that something's up, and that was kind of hinted throughout the film, but she knows that something's up. There's something more going on here, and we figure out very soon that there is. So Mike ends up leaving Abby with his aunt as a babysitter, and then he goes into work, and he goes back into his dream state, and turns out that these kids he's seeing in his dreams are definitely the kids that are possessing these animatronics. I mean, this was figured out earlier in the film, but he starts asking them what they want, and it turns out that they want to make Abby like them. They want her to be like they are, like in an animatronic, which is very not good. And then in the dream, Mike kind of denies them. He says that they're not going to take his sister from him, and the kids start attacking Michael, and they start kind of coming after him, trying to kill him, and he just manages to escape, but something happens. This is so crazy. While Abby is being watched by Mike's aunt, Golden Freddy, appears in the house and presumably kills her and then takes Abby. And then we get Corey Kenshin as a taxi driver. But yes, Golden Freddy shows up and kills someone and then takes Abby, and they go back to the pizzeria, and Abby's there alone. Mike wakes up and he's being healed by Vanessa. She's helping him out, but Abby's at the pizzeria alone. She goes in and the animatronics are there and they're looking like all nice and stuff, and then she starts getting led into a back room to be put into a suit that has spring locks in it. You can obviously see where this is leading. But Mike wakes up and he starts asking Vanessa, like, he's like, okay, you know something is up. You have to tell me what's going on here. And she tells him that the children who went missing a long time ago, back in the 80s, were killed by a man named William Afton. And she shows a picture to him of William in the golden bunny suit. And it's revealed that Vanessa is William's daughter, which is a little bit weird. That's a little bit of a change up from the lore of the games, but I'm here for it. I'm okay with the movie separating itself from the games just a little bit, you know, not completely, but I feel like they've done a good job of making it its own separate universe, so I want to see where it goes. So Mike races back to the pizzeria and finds Abby. She's about to get stuffed in the suit. In one of my favorite scenes in the movie, he goes into the parts and services room and shoots Chica in the eye with a taser gun given to him by Vanessa, and it like short circuits Chica and she just falls over. And he goes and gets Abby, and then they try to start like getting out of the pizzeria. They just want to get out of there. But then the man himself, William Afton, shows up, decked out in his golden rabbit outfit. This scene is so good, and it's such a great payoff, not only just for Five Nights at Freddy's fans who have wanted to see this for 8 years, but also just a good payoff for the movie, because honestly, this is what we were all waiting for. This is who we wanted to see. We wanted to see, you know, Golden Bonnie, the Springtrap suit. We wanted to see William Afton mess some shit up. And mess some shit up he does. His entrance is one of the coldest, like, entrances I've seen in a movie. But he comes in, and the lights turn green, same as the color palette of Five Nights at Freddy's 3, which has Springtrap in it. And he starts wailing on Mike. And some of the shots, I mean, there's a shot where I want to take a chance to talk about this because I haven't seen it talked about, where he pushes Mike and then he kicks him in the face, and it cuts to this like awesome wide shot where just William's leg is way up in the air and Mike is like flying over in slow motion, and it just looks so good with the green lighting. Oh, it was so good. It was so good, guys. But turns out William has some power over these animatronics. He's able to control them because he's brainwashed them with these pictures he's put up on the wall. And this is very similar to the Silver Eyes book, which actually had the same plot point where the animatronics were actually being controlled by William. So they thought that William was this nice guy who played with them and gave them a home. Turns out that they were manipulated, and he was the one who killed them. So in figuring this out, Vanessa shows up, and she actually gets William to take off the bunny mask, and of course it's revealed to be Matthew Lillard. I mean, we all knew that this was coming as Five Nights at Freddy's fans. We all saw the casting, so it wasn't like a huge reveal. We all kind of saw it coming, but a reveal nonetheless, and we get to see Matthew Lillard really play this crazy guy with a knife in a bunny suit. Long story short, he ends up stabbing Vanessa, his daughter, presumably just injuring her. I don't think she's dead. At the end of the film, we see her in a hospital. And then Abby draws a picture really quick to put up on the wall to show these animatronics who William really is. And then we get the infamous spring lock failure scene from the games. Perhaps the most famous scene from Five Nights at Freddy's recreated in the movie, and I thought it lived up. I mean, the only thing I can complain about is that I wish we could have gotten more, but with what they had to work with, they did it justice. This whole scene, the spring locks are going into him. You get some nice close-ups of them penetrating skin and like just penetrating his body, and the sound design, you can hear them like going in. It's just so good. And then of course he says the famous line, "I always come back," puts the head back on, and as he's dying, the animatronics drag him off to the back room, and the pizzeria starts to collapse with the spirits inside, and he's just being dragged away. And of course he's jittering all around because all these mechanical objects are just being forced into his body, and they drag him back into the back room. And that's pretty much where the movie ends. It's kind of a happy ending, but it sets up for possible sequels as well, because at the very end of the movie we actually get one final shot of William in the back room, and the Golden Freddy kid closes the door on him, and that's pretty much where it ends. We also get a post-credit scene with Corey Kenshin and Balloon Boy, who has been popping up throughout the film until this point. Just a really funny like jump scare gimmick. I'm 100% sure that was a Scott idea. That just seems like so Scott Cawthon to me, honestly. And then after all that, at the very end of the credits, we actually get a nice little cryptic Easter egg, a very Scott Cawthon and Five Nights at Freddy's Easter egg. Like back in Five Nights at Freddy's 2, you would get these cryptic messages where like a sentence was spelled out, like "save them" or "you can't" or something like that. And in this one, it spells out "come find me," which I think is referring to William Afton, who's now Springtrap, saying "come find me, I'm in this back room, we're not done yet." So yeah, they're definitely setting up for some sequels, and I can't wait to see where they go with it. Overall, this film isn't perfect, but I would give it like an 8.5 out of 10. I don't think I've ever been so fulfilled by a movie in my life, honestly. The writing isn't perfect. It's not even very good at some points, and it feels very janky. I wish that we had gotten more of the horror. I wish that the film was a little bit scarier, maybe took a little bit more risks. I wish it was rated R, obviously, but that was never going to happen. But with what they had to work with at their disposal, I think that they've done a phenomenal job, and I just have to say that after 8.5 years, this was extremely satisfying. And I don't know if like Scott Cawthon will ever see this, probably won't, or anyone from Blumhouse, but just thank you. This damn gnat flying in my face. Sorry, but yeah, just thank you for delivering. This was truly a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and I'm just so glad that I got to witness it. Like I said, I was teary-eyed at a few parts watching this movie just because I couldn't believe that it was actually happening. But here we are. I'm excited for the next one. Where's the next one, Scott? Let's keep rolling, man. I can't wait to see what happens with the next film. Anyways, I think that's gonna be all for me. If you're a Five Nights at Freddy's fan, don't miss this one. I think you'll enjoy it a lot. And yeah, just take care, guys. Stay safe, and yeah, be safe out there. Bye.